Give us your overall reaction to this plan. Does it make sense?
No, it doesn't. I have long supported $10,000 of debt forgiveness if coupled with reforms that address some of the structural problems and misaligned incentives. This goes way beyond that. It's about double the cost, from about 250 billion to 500 billion. Plus, for 27 million borrowers out of the 43 that are eligible, they'll get 20,000 of relief. And so I have compassion for these borrowers within limits. But to be handing out that amount of debt forgiveness without any kind of fundamental reforms to the system, particularly aligning incentives so that colleges have some skin in the game, some responsibility for this. Without it, students are going to borrow even more. Colleges are going to encourage them to borrow even more. We're going to be right back where we started from in a few years. And everybody's going to be whispering, oh, well, let's get canceled again. I mean, you've got to reform the system in conjunction with providing debt cancellation, or it's just really, really irresponsible to do.
So we talked earlier today here on Bloomberg with the Secretary of Education, he's Miguel Cardona, and we asked him actually about that issue, about how you're going to reform this so it doesn't happen again. This is part of what he had to say.
So we are getting to the root of the issue. We're going to increase accountability in higher education. We're going to go after those folks that are taking advantage of students, that are leading to college debt that's extremely high for certifications or degree that don't really matter. So we are increasing that end of it too.
So, Shelia, that all sounds pretty good, although I must say I tried to press the Secretary about exactly how are you holding them accountable. I didn't come away with a lot of specifics. How would you do it?
Yeah. Well, look, this is a systemic problem. I think the Biden administration is still going on the premise that somehow this is just a few bad actors that are abusing the system. This is ingrained. They have given colleges incentives. They're revenue maximizing like anybody else is. They've given colleges and students, every incentive to borrow. They call it financial aid. You're going to get all these enhanced earnings if you go to college. This is baked into the system now. Across the board, all colleges need some accountability. It's not just a few bad actors. Harvard, Columbia, they've all been outed for these really high cost, especially graduate programs that lead to nothing in terms of enhanced income. So it needs to be systemic. I would, any college should have to start making up part of the cost if their non-payment rates exceed a certain level. I don't think that should be hard to do. The ones that really bad outcomes and really high default and non-payment levels should be disqualified from the system. But this is systemic. It needs to be addressed systemically, not just this idea that a few bad actors are going to be outed on this. Well, it's embedded in the system.
You make such a powerful point, at least I think, Shelia, which is the underlying theory is you borrow money so that you can get education, so you can make more money, you can repay the loan.
Right.
And there are too many of these loans, as I understand it, with people who never even get a degree. So they're not increasing their earning capacity at all.
They're not. They've got debt. They've got no degree. They've got no enhanced earning capacity. And then a lot of the others that pursue, graduate, philosophy majors or PhDs or whatever. And hey, I was a philosophy major, but you spend a couple $100,000 on that, you're not going to be able to pay that loan back. There should be some common sense caps as well, especially on graduate professional school, because if they really are pursuing degrees that are going to lead to increased income, they can also get private sector help. So, the case for federal government with the undergraduate is much more powerful with the graduate. But yeah, they don't, even when they do get a degree, sometimes it's not worth anywhere what they paid for it in terms of tuition and other costs.
Yeah, by the way, I was a philosophy major too, for what it's worth. Okay. So that makes two of us here.
Right.
But address another issue, which is fairness, as it were, Shelia. Two ways. One is some people got loans and they paid them off. They didn't get this kind of break. And the other fairness is there are a lot of people who are needy out there who make less than $125,000 who didn't go to college. They're not getting any break.
Well, that's a real question, whether $500 billion, is this really the best way to spend $500 billion? If we're going to be spending it, let's focus it on the much more financially in need segment of the population. Yes, this will help some students low-income students in true financial distress, but it's going to help a lot of other people as well. And no, this is not a good way to spend $500 billion. And it will have some inflationary impact. I think, I worry about housing. As you know, I've been involved in housing for many years, used to be the chair of the Fannie Mae board. And I really worry about, housing's been red hot for several years now. We saw 20% home price increases in both 2020 and 2021. It's still, even though home sales are going down a bit, we're still seeing about a 10.8%, annualized increase this year. So this is going to, this is going to expand people's ability to borrow for a house, whereas before the student debt might have been keeping them from that. And in ordinary times, I would say that's great. I want people to have home ownership, but not now. The home prices are overheated. There's a supply constraint. We need to be focusing on supply, not demand. And for lower income first generation students who may be benefiting from this program, for them to get in the housing market now is crazy. We're due for a correction, but notably, some of the best business support for this was coming from the housing industry. So, yeah, I think this is going to absolutely be increasing home ownership demand at a time when we really need to focus on supply, not demand, in the housing sector.
Shelia, that's a great point about housing. I had not made that connection. One last one here. You're not very enthusiastic about this plan. You've set out what should be done. Do you have hope? You've spent a fair amount of time in Washington. You know how it works. I'm sure there are entrenched interests who don't want some of the reforms you're asking for. Are some people pressing for those reforms?
Well, I do hope. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of debate, public focus. Maybe this will serve as a catalyst to have fundamental reform. In fairness to the Biden administration, a lot of this needs to be done by Congress, and maybe this will catalyze some true, meaningful reforms. But I also do think one more important point to make on this: with current borrowers who now are getting their expectations up, they're going to get, $27 million, will get $20,000 in relief. This thing, I think, is going to be challenged in court. It's got a weak legal basis. It may not stand up. And so there again, we're creating expectations and uncertainty in a way that I think is not helpful to current and future student borrowers. But I do think folks should be aware of that. This is probably going to have a legal challenge, and I'm not sure where it's going to end up.